So, just moments ago, all or some of the polling places in 9 states, including Connecticut, Indiana, Kentucky, New York, Virginia, Maine, New Hampshire, New Jersey, and Vermont, have opened to the public. The stakes, control of the state houses and Congress, and here are the numbers so far. In the Senate, Democrats need a gain of 2 seats to win control. In that chamber, they've received some very good news in a Quinnipiac poll of New Jersey, where Democratic Senator Bob Menendez gained late momentum to open up a 15-point lead against Republican Bob Hugin. In the House, Democrats need to gain 23 seats to take control. Yesterday, the Cook Political Report released its final ratings with 75 competitive races, 70 Republican-held seats, and just 5 held by Democrats. And of 41 open seats held by Republicans, 15 are rated toss-ups or leaning toward the Democrat, while only 5, Joe, lean Republican.
It's going to be a huge day. Let's look at some of the headlines. The Washington Post. Uncertainty rules as the midterms reach the wire. The Boston Globe. Donald Trump says he's on the ballot. He is right.
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal. The candidates race to the finish. And the New York Times. The campaign to be decided that is driven by division. And, Willie, it has been driven by division. Michael Steele will tell you this. Like any campaign chairman that had sent a president to a swing state to try to influence swing voters and said, hey, listen, we're going to have you up there with Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity. They're going to be campaigning for you. And in the other world, the candidate would go, that's awesome, Jim. You're fired. That's just not. It's not what you do.
You forgot Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Judge.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah. Boy,
trifecta.
That is really going to get the swing voters out there. And of course, this comes on the heels of Paul Ryan reportedly calling Donald Trump this past week. He said, please talk about the economy, talk about unifying issues. Talk about the things that are going to get swing voters out and actually help us. And Donald Trump oblivious saying, I think my immigration, the ad and all that, he thinks that's going just great. Let me tell you something. If that works, then I would suggest, if you look at political history, if you look at political science, tonight would be an even bigger shock than 2016.
The last 2 years have been about Donald Trump and his personality, the power of his personality, the ability to gobble up the airwaves, to control the conversation, and he's using that power over the last few months to talk about himself and his accomplishments. And you would think chief among those, as Paul Ryan indicated, would be the economy. We got that incredible jobs report on Friday. Imagine getting that, Michael Steele, as a Republican, the Friday before Election Day. It's the only thing you would be talking about. But alas, the president calls up Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity. He's making a base play in a lot of places where he needs to broaden the map a little bit.
Something like that. The weekend before the general election, where it's already a highly contentious and there's a lot of unknowns. You take that to the bank, as Joe can tell you. You're running for Congress, but you put that in your hip pocket and you're knocking on every door and say, look what we've done, look at what we're doing. But instead, the focus is, as you said, on what the president is saying, what the president is doing, and his friends who are with him. The reality of it is, it doesn't work in a swing state. You need those swing district voters to come out. You need to incentivize them. But the play has never been about that. I mean, you look at the last few weeks, the president has gone every place but those locations where you have Republicans on the bubble.
Donald Trump, Susan, knew that the last 10 days of the campaign after the Comey letter, that his job was to do no harm, keep his head low, let people talk about Hillary. The final 10 days, he's made it all about himself. He said it is about himself. And, like we've said before, when people are talking about Dianne Feinstein rigging the process of the Kavanaugh hearings, or they're talking about Hillary Clinton rigging the Democratic National Convention, or whatever they're talking, if the topic is not Donald Trump does better. He's made it all about himself, all about smallpox, all about ads so racist that even Fox took them down. And he's pinning that.
Yeah.
And you can look at the data. Patrick Ruffini, I saw him, a Republican, saying, look at the data on the upshot polls. They have shown an uptick for the Democrats. This past week has been devastating for Republicans if you believe polls.
Yeah, but you would have to go on the assumption that Donald Trump is actually going out there to help other people.
Right.
He never goes out to help anybody. He's going out there for himself, and he knows he's going to be facing a weak administration if the Democrats take over the House. And I think he is doing this red state strategy simply to firm up his numbers because he doesn't want to get primaried. That's why Donald Trump does things, only in self-interest.
Even if Elijah Cummings gets the subpoena power? I mean, it seems to me he would actually be working to help Republican candidates. But especially in these competitive House races, but you ask any Republican candidate in these competitive House races, they will say Donald Trump has hurt them over the past couple of months.
And he's made it a national referendum on himself. He should remember he lost the national race by the popular vote by 3 million votes.
All right, so if you're looking for some early indicators in the night, a few races to watch include Kentucky's 6th district, where polls close at 6 p.m. Eastern. At 7 p.m., look at Virginia's 2nd, 5th, 7th, and 10th districts, Georgia's 6th, 7th districts, and 6 competitive House races in Florida as well at 8 p.m. Races to watch in Illinois include the 6th, 12th, and 14th, and closing at 9 p.m., New York's 19th and 22nd districts, along with Michigan's 8th district and the 32nd district of Texas.
So, Mika, you look really at 6 and 7 o'clock. We're going to know so much.
It's going to
that
be
Kentucky race. If Amy McGrath
really
comes
telling.
through and wins there, you've got a veritable cornucopia of demographic breakdowns in Virginia districts. You're going to be able to tell so much just
Early
by
on
what
tonight.
happens at 6 and 7 o'clock.
Let's go.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.